When Power of the Force 2 first came out in 1995, well, not only was it new Star Wars figures, but it was really looked at as, well, these are the new definitive versions of these characters for this new line. But the first waves were not quite screen accurate, is a nice way of putting it. Well, with the trend of more muscular figures that was huge in the early 90s, Kenner, Hasbro logically went forward and buffed up their Star Wars characters, especially for the first few waves. Eventually, as Power of the Force 2 continued, we got more realistic, at least as far as Star Wars goes, realistic, but I guess you could say proportioned figures, and especially because Power of the Force 2 went longer than any of the other branded modern lines, whether you see them as one long line that's lasted 30 years or individual ones. Either way, Power of the Force 2 wins with the sheer number of characters and years that it left on shelf. So by the time you were able to make changes, well, from that first wave, it takes pretty much 2 to 3 years in order to actually go from fan feedback to on shelf. So the whole concept that the original definitive version of Luke Skywalker was going to be super buff and have his shirt falling to the side, showing off his rippling space muscles, even though the photo looks nothing like that. Yeah, we got a new one. We got a more appropriately scaled Luke, appropriate body type, but it took about 3 years. Same with Princess Leia, and the less said about the very first modern Princess Leia, probably the better, because needless to say, it doesn't do Carrie Fisher justice, and let's just leave it at that. But again, the same thing. 3 years later, finally, and this opened up the question of, are we going to constantly get updated versions of Star Wars figures? Something we didn't have back in the 80s. There was just one Tatooine Luke and one Chewbacca. Now, before Episode 1 came out, Power of the Force 2, as it moved forward into a marketing tool for the prequel, released a set of figures with flashback photos that were the main cast yet again. This was really the first time the whole main cast was on shelf, really since the very beginning, since, again, Power of the Force 2 running, 95 to 99, so yeah, a good 4.5 years. So the one-and-done concept that was so prevalent in the early Kenner line in the 80s was obviously not going to carry forward in the modern line, and this took a little bit of adjustment for collectors at the time, who, again, had really bought in, thinking, this is my Chewbacca, this is my Lando, with super tight, rippling muscle shirt on. And again, less said about that Princess Leia face sculpt, the better. We'll just move on, giant lightsaber jokes aside. So as the line continued, we obviously would continue to get the same character, sometimes completely resculpted, sometimes using some parts, sometimes just with a new head, but an improvement nonetheless, and this became just part of the line and part of the accepted figure release. The concept that figures were only going to release once pretty much faded away, knowing that inevitably anyone could get redone, right? I mean, heck, even Yakface got a new figure, so that means everyone's fair game. Well, maybe not quite, although, Yakface does have some cultural significance, and he was released as part of the sail barge promotion. All right, so I'm going to divide this up into a couple different categories and kind of go through. There's actually interesting reasons why so many other figures are one and done, and the chance of ever seeing them again on the shelf, pretty much head over to eBay if you're interested. All right, so the first category is Money Works category, and that's because, yes, the classic trilogy and the main characters of that continue to be mainstay sellers. While you'll see the occasional prequel clones or Jedi, pretty much the original trilogy continues to push character selection on shelf. Now, as far as background characters getting redone, it has happened in the modern line, but it's interesting that pretty much if you're going to get a redo, you had to be in the Kenner line. For example, every single one of the Kenner Cantina aliens have been redone multiple times in the modern line. And in fact, the only Cantina aliens that have been redone outside of the ones that were in Kenner was Dr. Evazan here, who honestly begged for a better one. And he also had more dialogue than anyone else in the Cantina. I mean, as far as, any alien. So, well, outside of Greedo, I suppose. So, you could see also he's in a category. And then the Cantina band, also, again, they had more screen time than any other alien from the Cantina. So, basically, they're the only two Cantina aliens ever redone in the modern line from 95 on that didn't have a figure back in the Kenner days. So, yeah, for those of you who are, waiting around thinking that these Cantina aliens are going to get redos at this point. You want the fin-headed bim vid din din bin bin bomb boom bim. Go look it up on Wikipedia. But yeah, this guy's not getting another figure. Go check eBay or garage sales for him. All right. The second category I would put figures in is the investment category. And that comes from the release of movies and the tie-in to the cost of tooling. When there's a major movie, there's a much larger budget. So you have more you can spend on tooling, which is why when there's a movie release, for the most part, Star Wars lines have had a huge number of characters released. And a lot of these characters, some had key moments in the movies and actually had dialogue on screen. But there were also a lot of characters that were just, again, background characters from all of the prequels. Not Jedi, not droids, not clones. General Grievous, even him, a major new character, really doesn't show up that much in the toy lines. And yes, I know there's a Black Series tool, and now that exists, it can be re-released in any color, but how often is he really on shelf? All right, the next category is the banned list. And this isn't meant to sound like ominous and stuff, but, let's face facts. We know that Princess Leia in her, I believe the current term is Hutt Slayer Leia. I'm sorry, she's Slave Leia or Bikini Leia. That was always what we called her as a kid, and there were plenty of toys. There have been toys of her for years. There's been a ton of merchandise of her for years. You could buy official Halloween costumes of this. Hopefully not for me, because I would look terrible like this. Terrible thought. Okay, let's move forward. The point is that Slave Leia is part of pop culture. There's references to her on everything from Friends to Family Guy. So there is a change. You're not going to see that version of her used in merchandise and PR because it's has new ownership, and that's I'll let it rest at that. But yeah, it means that unfortunately, seeing more action figures of her. Same thing with someone like Cara Dune. We know that she's been removed from the Mandalorian series for political reasons or political correctness, whatever you want to call it. I loved her. I thought she was one of the best strong female leads we've had in sci-fi in years. She was like Ripley, and like a female that you just were like, yeah, go! Like you could cheer for her. And I don't know, it's really hard to do that because creating aspirational females on screen is tough. And I'm sad we're not going to have more merchandise of her because I think of all the characters, she's the most aspirational for females. Okay, last category. Let's be on a more happier, positive note. The what the category, and meaning there's figures that have been released over the years that you're like, I can't believe they released this. This would be Wilro Hood, the ice cream maker guy, because what he's carrying around was a 1970s ice cream maker, but you may know it now as a Cantano. Did I pronounce that right? It's the thing that they use in The Mandalorian as a safe. It was a reference to this. That was actually the joke, because the prop was a ice cream maker from the 1970s, and it was just some guy running in the background. But people were like, whoa, look, dude, that guy's got an ice cream maker. So he became known as Ice Cream Maker Guy, and he became part of pop culture, Star Wars collecting, and, well, to be fair, there were Star Wars fan sites that worked really hard to get him made as a figure and campaigned for it. The chance of seeing this again, even though it's, now there's like the running of the Wilros at Star Wars conventions, but, to commemorate this guy running in the background of Cloud City. Either way, unless this tool still exists, not going to see it again. Back to Dank Luke. All right. I love this figure. Let's get that out of the way right now. I was so excited when this came out. It was just so cool because I remembered that scene from Empire, and it was just like, oh my God, Luke's like in this tube, and wow, it was just like so spooky but comforting knowing he was going to be okay, and it just lasted in my memory. And I still have this toy on display in my back room in my office. Like I was like, I've run out of room, so I cram things everywhere. But he's there even with the medical droid. There was like a spot to plug both of them in, and it was really cool. It was like a little mini playset. At the end of the day, he's Luke in a diaper, and getting this figure released again, probably not going to happen. And the fact that we even got one is like, I feel like that's just like a gift from the collector gods, like that this existed and was sold at mass retail. And same thing with Slave Leia. You're saying that sexualizes Leia. Well, this definitely, sexualizes Luke. So I think everything like this is off the table. Yeah, this was released. This was Han Solo with Torture Rack. And again, oh, I loved this figure just because we didn't have anything like this. And to get like a whole giant prop, this whole line, the leading the whole 30th anniversary line, like, wow, did we get like a lot for our money? I mean, this was a basic figure. This was not a deluxe figure. You all remember that scene where Han Solo tortures his future son-in-law for, Anakin reasons, and don't even ask him questions because it's fun to torture Han. Well, you can do that at home now, kids. Yep, the entire torture rack complete with leather straps and torture mechanisms, and it's articulated, like it goes up and down, so you can actually move him away from the torture and back again. Wow, I thought we were getting lighter. Now we're getting darker. But the point is, this was an amazing toy, and it was a great value. Rebel Scum did an awesome job doing a photo display. I like to use their images because can't plug them enough. Or even the next one is going to be from Galactic Hunter. You can see in their shot, without the torture rack, he looks really goofy because he doesn't have a belt on, and God, he's like basically you have to just have him in that machine, and that's it. That's all you can do with him. But as a lifelong collector of this line, I like having unique things. All right, so as cool as some of these toys are, I think for various reasons, all the toys kind of covered in the last 11 minutes or so are pretty much your one and dones from the modern Star Wars line. So hey, head to eBay. Any ones I missed? Are there categories or just even other figures in general that don't fit into any of those categories that you think we'll never see again on shelf at retail? Curious your thoughts. Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you for sharing this video. It's the best way to show support for this channel. And I'll see you guys in the comments and the next video. Thanks a lot.